All right, you guys ready? Which one's already done them? Oh, you're a pro. All right. Both my notes. No. Here. Good afternoon. Good evening, I should say. Welcome, everyone. The board, thank you for attending. The video of this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and also is available on Facebook and posted to the village website. I would call the meeting to order at 7:37 and ask Clerk Saladino to call the roll.
Trustee Augustine.
Here.
Trustee Gale.
Here.
Trustee Katinik.
Here.
Trustee McGee.
Here.
Trustee O'Brien.
Here.
Trustee Peterson.
Here.
President Kukler.
Here. And we have a quorum. We also have a lot of people in attendance. It's very exciting to see everyone. We are especially excited to see our police officers and firefighters here. I know that many of you are here because it's exciting to have two promotions that we're going to be announcing and swearing in, both Deputy Chief Ewer and Sergeant Kaiser. And we're going to start the meeting off with a Pledge of Allegiance that's going to be led by Owen and Bryson Kaiser, or Ewer, sorry. Don't get confused.
Please stand.
Are we turned on? To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, boys, stand up there. I'm not sure if your microphone's working or not, but can you tell us what grade and what school you go to?
Second grade in Manning.
Awesome.
First grade in Miller.
That's fantastic. Well, I know you guys do the Pledge of Allegiance a lot because you did a fantastic job. Thank you for leading us in the pledge. We really appreciate it. And thank you for all the sacrifices that you and your family do with having your dad serve the community of LaGrange. So we're really proud of him, and I know you are too. So thanks a bunch. You want to say anything more? You can say whatever you want. You're on TV.
That's it.
I'm sure we have a delay or pause button someplace.
All right. Thanks, bud. Thank you.
Good choice. I think we're going to jump right in to the swearing in. So the first swearing in we have is Deputy Chief Ken Ewer. And Ken's joined today by his dad, Ken, his mom, Chris, his wife, Kristen, his sister, Vicky, his uncle, Ed, and the two great boys you just saw. So again, we want to thank the family, both the parents, the wife, and the siblings, uncle. We know it's a sacrifice for the family every day when your husband leaves, father leaves to go to work, son leaves, knowing that it could be dangerous. We appreciate everything that he and everybody in the department does. And so with that, why don't we have who's ever going to stand up next to Ken, please do so. And let me tell you a little bit about Ken. There was a vacancy in the rank of Deputy Chief. It's existed since December 14th, 2021. After conducting an internal selection process, Chief Orloff selected Sergeant Ken Ewer to fill the Deputy Chief vacancy. Ken's an 18-year veteran of the LaGrange Police Department and began his career with the village in July of 2003. He has served as an investigator, field training officer, a NIPAS mobile field force officer, a patrol sergeant, and department's evidence custodian officer. Most recently, Ken has been the midnight shift watch commander. Ken has also served as member of 2 multi-jurisdictional teams, to include the Major Case Assistance Team and the South Suburban Major Crimes Task Force. He's received many awards throughout his career, including the Gallantry Star, an Educational Achievement Award, as well as Life Savings Awards, unit citations, and letters of commendation. Ken has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Norwich University, and he most recently completed the Northwestern University's 10-week School of Police Staff and Command. Ken also holds a number of state certifications. So please join me in congratulating Ken on this promotion. And now Clerk Saladino will do the swearing in.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ken Ewer,
I, Ken Ewer,
having been appointed to the office of Deputy Police Chief
having been appointed to the office of Deputy Police Chief
in the village of LaGrange,
in the village of LaGrange,
in the county of Cook,
in the county of Cook,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of Deputy Police Chief
the duties of the office of Deputy Police Chief
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
And I know Chief Warloff's been relying on you and is happy to have you as his first assistant. So thank you very much. And again, thank you to your family. We also have another promotion, and that is Sergeant Michael Kaiser. Michael is not the father of Owen or Bryson, but he is here, or on his behalf are his dad, Dave, and his mom, Pam. So again, Dave and Pam, thank you so much. We know that as a parent, it's difficult knowing that your son serves us. It can be dangerous. We appreciate his sacrifice. We appreciate your sacrifice. It really means a lot to us. And obviously, Michael's been a great asset to the department. And to give a little bit of Michael's background, with the appointment of Ken to Deputy Chief of Police, a vacancy in the position of Sergeant exists. Officer Mike Kaiser was approved by the Board of Fire and Police Commission at their January 25th, 2023 meeting for promotion to the position of Sergeant. Officer Kaiser is a 6-year veteran of the LaGrange Police Department and began his career with the village in June of 2016. He has served as a field training officer, evidence technician, lead homicide investigator, rapid deployment instructor, and most recently, his afternoon shift squad leader. Michael has received many awards throughout his career, including several Life Savings Awards, a unit citation, and several letters of commendation. He's graduated from the College of DuPage with an Associate of Applied Science degree in criminal justice, as well as the Fire Science and Emergency Medical Technician. Additionally, he holds a number of state certifications. So with that, please congratulate Sergeant Mike Kaiser on his promotion. And now we're going to have Clerk Saladino swear him in.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Michael Kaiser,
I, Michael Kaiser,
having been appointed to the office of Police Sergeant
having been appointed to the office of Police Sergeant
in the village of
in
LaGrange,
the village of LaGrange,
in the county of Cook,
in the county of Cook,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of Police Sergeant
the duties of the office of Police Sergeant
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'll do a presentation now. Congratulations. Mike, this is for you too. We're going to keep going with great things about the police department. And at this time, I'd like to recognize two guests that we have. Chief Jason Cates, our former police chief, is here because LaGrange got the ILEAP Tier 1 accreditation. It was really when the village brought in Chief Cates that he recognized the need for that, how it would really help formulate our goals for the police department, that it would enhance not only the police department's service to the community, but also their morale and giving them goals to work for. So Chief Cates, thank you very much. We also have Tammy Madden, who's our deputy director, and was really one of the primary purposes of bringing in Tammy was because of her experience with the accreditation process. I know it's been one of your priorities. We appreciate everything you've done to get us where we were going and helping us continue on. So thank you very much. I'm not sure if either of you want to speak. Feel free if you do. Well, they both looked at Chief Orlov and said, "Hey, you're the chief. You can say a few words." So let me say a little bit about the accreditation, and then Chief, if you want to add anything, feel free. But it's real exciting for the village to receive this accreditation. It is the police department's first accreditation that I'm aware of. So the village board in 2021 strategic plan included the goal of the police department achieving state level accreditation. In December of 2021, police department staff started the process of seeking this accreditation under the Illinois Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, referred to as ILEAP, under the Illinois Associations of Chiefs of Police. And do we have anybody from the association here? We do, so thank you, and I think they're maybe going to speak also, so that's fantastic. Staff conducted an in-depth review of all department policies and made necessary changes following recommended best practices under ILEAP and the Illinois Police Accreditation Coalition, which are Safety Act compliant. Changes necessary to seek Tier 1 state-level accreditation included a complete audit of the police department's property and evidence management system, training of personnel, equipment purchasing, and providing proof of compliance in various areas. Through late October and into early November of 2022, the police department underwent an on-site evaluation through ILEAP. The assessment included a review of 69 policies with supporting proofs, ride along with officers, interviews with various village personnel, and a tour and inspection of the department. In December of 2021, the police department staff started the process of seeking state-level Tier 1 accreditation under the Illinois Law Enforcement Accreditation Program with the Association of Chiefs of Police. The department received a letter from iLeap Council in December of 2022 announcing that LaGrange Police Department was unanimously recognized for accreditation at the Tier 1 level. The department has already begun the process of seeking state-level Tier 2 accreditation with the goal of achieving accreditation at the national level. This accreditation is reflective of the police department's commitment to advancing its professionalism in order to better serve the needs of the LaGrange community. So please join me in recognizing the police department for their hard work. And I think we have maybe somebody from Downers Grove. I'm not sure.
Well, good evening, Village President Kukler, members of the board, Village Manager Knight, and Chief Wardlaw. My name is Shannon Gillette, and I currently serve as Vice President at Large for the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. It is my privilege to join you this evening to present the LaGrange Police Department with its 2022 Tier 1 iLeap Accreditation Award. The Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police created iLeap, the Illinois Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, about 10 years ago as a way to help police departments communicate to their constituents their unwavering commitment to pursue the highest professional standards. Accreditation requires a department-wide commitment to organizational excellence. Chief Wardlaw, Accreditation Manager Tammy Madden, and the entire police department spent several months preparing for assessors to review their department policies, procedures, and practices. I would also like to recognize former Interim Police Chief Jason Cates, who was instrumental in supporting the department's effort to pursue iLeap accreditation. As you mentioned, the iLeap assessment team spent 2 full days on site observing members of the police department in the field, interviewing staff members, and spending time understanding the culture of excellence in the LaGrange Police Department. This independent third-party review ensures that accredited organizations do exactly what they say they do, which is to serve and protect according to the highest professional and ethical standards. Once accredited, the LaGrange Police Department will remain so for a period of 4 years. So on behalf of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, congratulations to the Village of LaGrange, Chief Wardlaw, and the entire LaGrange Police Department on achieving its 2022 Tier 1 iLeap accreditation.
Chief, I know the department worked very hard to receive this accreditation. If you want to mention a few words, feel free.
Thank you, President Kukler. I would just like to thank the team of LaGrange, all the hard work and dedication that they put into it to take this next step to bringing the agency forward so that one day we can hopefully meet the national level. So I appreciate everything that they did. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you again, and congratulations to the department. Tammy and Jason, thank you for your leadership and help in that regard, and obviously Chief Wardlaw for being the leader. We appreciate that. As we've often said, our employees, we really view them as family. We also have a good relationship with our surrounding towns, and it's with heartfelt condolences that we as a board extend to the family of Matt Hayden. Matt was a young Westmont Public Works employee who passed away due to the result of a tragic incident in the line of duty, repairing probably a water main, they think. Our thoughts and prayers are with his coworkers and with his family at this difficult time. And thank you. Moving on to much happier news. Restaurant Week has started in LaGrange. It started last Friday and will go through Sunday, March 5th. So you have almost a whole week to attend. Many of the restaurants and even some of the stores are running specials. They're great. It's a great opportunity to try some new places or things that you wouldn't normally order off the menu. So please, I think the best way to look at it is to go on the individual restaurants' web pages where they're promoting what they're offering during this event. But you can also go on LagrangeEvents.com, which is one of the LGBA's websites. And there's much to experience through the culinary offerings. Thanks for the LGBA and all the participating restaurants and businesses. With stormwater management, we had a big storm early this morning. Other than Trustee Tim O'Brien, whose sump pump stopped working, I think most of the people, at least inside their house, didn't get too much water, which is great. We know that there's more storms coming, and we are anxiously awaiting Judge Cohn's ruling. He indicated that he expected to issue his ruling prior to March 9th, and he continued the matter for a status hearing on March 9th. So we are eagerly awaiting the order. We're optimistic that he will find in favor of the village and looking forward to moving forward on that project. As discussed at the last board meeting, during the budget workshops, funding has not only been allocated to the 50th Street project, but several efforts aimed at mitigation for storm water. This includes a large increase in the annual budget for sewer lining projects that improve the functionality to keep those sewers moving considerably, lasting considerably longer, really doubling their useful life. Next year, we have budgeted to spend $600,000 for sewer lining. We've also budgeted to study the basins and depressional areas north of 47th to create a comprehensive understanding of possible solutions and best targets for investments to provide optimal relief. We're also televising sewer lines to identify any issues that may impact their effectiveness. In Capital Works, we also have funds budgeted for future resurfacing of parking lot 3 with permeable pavers. And not that it directly relates with flooding, but it does with storms. And that is, you're going to see, or you may see, beginning next week, some tree trimming. There'll be an outside crew that's going to be focusing on the area of LaGrange Road to East Avenue between Elm and Goodman. We do in the village of LaGrange refer to our trees in our parkway as our urban forest. We utilize both outside vendors and our great public works group to maintain and prune the trees, keep them away from the power lines so that when the storms come, branches fall, hopefully no residents lose power. We appreciate the hard work that Public Works does, especially on early mornings like today. Tonight, we're going to hear about a parking study. We have on the agenda the presentation of the much anticipated study that was performed by Sam Schwartz Consulting. The study will serve to inform an understanding of the current and future demand for parking in the Central Business District and West End. Please feel free to ask any questions, both the board and the public. The process of developing the report included broad public input throughout the process, involving over 1,000 residents, visitors, business owners, and employees, and we look forward to their presentation and resulting discussion. As many know, we have Acting Chief John Buckley as our fire chief, and we appreciate his hard efforts. On tonight's agenda is an agreement for the executive recruitment services with the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association. Interim Chief Buckley has done an excellent job in the role following Chief Avra's retirement and is assisting in the process of recruiting a permanent placement in that position. So we appreciate all of your hard work, Chief, and we look forward to the process of identifying the village's next fire chief. And lastly, the next village board meeting will actually be on a Saturday. It'll be Saturday, March 11th at 8 a.m. here in the auditorium. The next regular meeting of the village board will be that following Monday, March 14th. And I guess lastly, many of us, and anyone who really wants to join us, feel free. We'll be marching in Countryside St. Patrick's Day Parade Saturday at 1 p.m. If anybody would like to join in with LaGrange, please do so. Otherwise, just come out and watch and maybe collect some candy. So thanks, everyone. And moving on, do we have a village manager's report?
We do, and thank you, President Kukler. First off, congratulations to Deputy Chief Ewer and Sergeant Kaiser on the recent promotions. Also wanted to congratulate the department on receiving the Tier 1 accreditation. Some great accomplishment there, and thank you for your efforts. Quick update on the fire department remodeling work. Renovation work continues in the fire department bunk room with the kitchen soon to follow. 2 items appear on tonight's agenda regarding the work. The first includes a change order to address moisture intrusion discovered in the course of removing the bunk room ceiling. And the second, serving to establish a sufficient contingency amount to address any additional unforeseen conditions. Third item, purchase of appliances for remodeled kitchen is also on the agenda. Overall, the work is progressing well, thanks to the efforts of personnel in the fire and public works departments, as well as our contracted services. So thank you all for your efforts there. Next up, we have a quick update on a recent meeting last week. The Lyons Township Regional Flooding Meeting was held last week. Myself, Director of Public Works Colby, Trustee Augustine, and community members attended a regional flooding meeting with Congressman Caspin, which was hosted by Lyons Township. The meeting provided an overview of flood mitigation efforts occurring throughout the region and was useful in illuminating the common issues facing all communities within the region. Sincere thank you to the event organizers, Lyons Township, and representatives of MWRD. In addition to the meeting announcement that President Kukler made, there's a couple additional meetings, including the Design Review Commission, which will meet on March 8th at 7:30 p.m. in the lower conference room here in this building. And the Environmental Quality Commission will meet on March 9th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. President Kukler, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Manager Knight. We appreciate that update. At this time, I would ask Clerk Saladino to read the items under the consent and current business portions of tonight's agenda.
Matters on the consent agenda will be considered by a single motion and vote because they already have been considered fully by the board at a previous meeting or have been determined to be of a routine nature. Any member of the Board of Trustees may request that an item be moved from the consent agenda to current business for separate consideration. Item A, ordinance, granting a variation for the required front yard of 424 East Maple Avenue. Item B, award of contract, fire department bunk room and kitchen renovation change of order. Item C, purchase, appliances associated with the fire department remodeling project. Item D, minutes of the Village of LaGrange Board of Trustees regular meeting Monday, February 13th, 2023. And item E, consolidated voucher 230227. Current business. This agenda item includes consideration of matters being presented to the Board of Trustees for action. Item A, presentation, parking study. And item B, agreement, executive recruitment services with Illinois Fire Chiefs Association. And item C, no.
Thank you, Clerk Saladino. At this time, I would ask if there's anybody from the public that has any comments on matters that are on tonight's agenda. Seeing none, I would ask if there's a motion and second on the consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, trustees Kutinik and Gale. At this time, I'd open it up for any questions from the board and trustee Augustine.
Thank you, President Kukler. As previously stated, I recuse myself from voting on any agenda items related to the village prosecutor, and I have no comments on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Seeing no comments, I would ask Clerk Saladino for a roll call vote on the consent agenda.
Trustee O'Brien.
Aye.
Trustee Peterson.
Aye.
Trustee McGee.
Aye.
Trustee Augustine.
Aye.
Trustee Gale.
Aye.
Trustee Kutinik.
Aye.
And the consent agenda passes unanimously. Next up is the parking study. And I see that Charity Jones has moved to the control tower there. Thank you, Charity. I know that this was a big project that you spearheaded a lot of. And we appreciate all of your efforts in that regard. I think we have Kelly Conley, who's going to help us through this. Kelly's with Sam Schwartz Consulting. And just for me to give a little bit of a brief background, following a competitive request for proposals, the village board approved a contract with Sam Schwartz Consulting to conduct an updated comprehensive parking study on May 23rd. The intent of the study is to inform an understanding of the nature of the current and future demand for parking throughout the Central Business District and the West End, and to provide recommendations for managing the village's varied parking needs. Recommendations within the report are informed by broad public input received throughout the planning process, and they serve to supplement the technical expertise of Sam Schwartz Consulting and resulting recommendations that reflect current industry best practices. Over 1,000 residents, visitors, and business owners participated. They were remote and in person, including one-on-one conversations, small focus groups, an online service, and a public open house. Representatives from Sam Schwartz Consulting will now present an overview of the study's key recommendations. Elements such as incorporation of a license plate reading technology and in parking enforcement activities, and updating of the parking fees and fines were previously contemplated and have been incorporated in the proposed 2023-24 budget. Upon acceptance of the study by the village board, staff will work to further incorporate the recommended policies, process, and parking infrastructure improvements into future budget proposals and policy deliberations. So, Attorney Schuster, would it be most appropriate for me to ask for a motion to start or a motion after the presentation? And I think the motion is only to accept the study, not to vote on any specific bills.
You can do it in any fashion that you choose.
Well, then I'll do it now so I don't forget. I would entertain a motion, and again, it is to accept the study, which I think means that we'll be directing staff to do some of the things, although I expect that maybe the board will be giving some input on what they would like to see focused on.
I'll make a motion to accept the study.
Thank you, Trustee Augustine. I'm sorry, did somebody second? Thank you, Trustee McGee. With that, why don't we turn it over to Kelly Conley to start us out? And Kelly, let us know if we're supposed to interrupt with questions or not interrupt, or however you want to do it.
Okay, thank you, President Kukler and members of the board. Thank you for having me. My name is Kelly Connolly, again with Sam Schwartz Consulting. We were retained to complete this parking study along with one of our team members, Desmond Associates, who specializes in parking garage design. I have about 15-minute presentation, and feel free to interrupt if you have questions on any of the slides. My intent is to just go through the structure of the report and highlight some of those key recommendations and to respond to questions if there's anything that you'd like me to focus on. Again, a recap, as President Kukler already mentioned, the focus of the study was to look at existing and future demand of parking in about a 10-year, 5 to 10-year horizon. We also looked at walking and biking connections because, as in the parking industry, we all know that having a very walkable district and community means that we have more efficient parking resources at our disposal. We had 2 distinct study areas. You can see, thank you. In the pink to the east of Kensington is what we were, oh, I'm sorry, wrong button, is what we refer to as downtown. And then another distinct area being West End, which goes all the way over to Gilbert, Kensington to Gilbert. Again, a quick project overview. We started this process in June. June to November, we spent most of the time collecting data, talking to stakeholders, conducting focus groups, and the community survey was released in mid-November, actually beginning of November, and available for about 2.5 weeks. November through December, we really focused on doing our analysis and developing preliminary recommendations, which we brought to the public at an open house early December. And then spending the rest of December and into February, really drafting a report and refining the recommendations based on the feedback we had heard from those preliminary recommendations. This is what you will see if you read the report. This is the cover, a table of contents we have. I was just going to walk through each of these sort of areas within the report so you understand the content within it. An introduction section, there is an executive summary, and I did prepare a handout that
they're on the table as people walked into the meeting, so if they want to grab one on their way out, they can.
Great. And so that is essentially what you will find in the executive summary. There's an introduction section where we talk about sort of the context, outreach, community perspectives, parking users and types of inventory, so the supply that we're working with and the people that are, and the types of users that are using the parking system, which we'll talk more about. Parking utilization and future needs, that's the actual cars, the demand on those spaces, administration and financing, and then finally a section on recommendations. Outreach and community perspectives, as I think President Kukler well put it, we talked to over 1,000 people in conducting this study. We conducted 4 focus groups and individually talked to several people through stakeholder interviews. The online survey reaped about 900 responses, which is a really good, it's not a statistically equivalent result, but it is a really good response rate for a survey of this nature that we do in communities throughout the Chicagoland area. And then the open house, December 6th, we held in this room. We gave a presentation and solicited feedback through boards and voting exercises. So all of that is summarized in this chapter. Parking users and types of inventory. We go through what is motivating parkers and who these users are, and this is very important because who those users are influences how we manage them. Each type of parker has different priorities, and these priorities can be managed by different policies that distribute those users to efficiently use the parking system as a whole. So, for example, employees are oftentimes in downtown districts, the bargain parkers, those parkers that are most willing to react to influences of policy and things of that nature. So you'll hear a lot of recommendations that are focused on employee parking. Customers, those are our high priority parkers. Those are ones we give free parking to. We subsidize the parking and allow them to park for free, but we place a time limit on them because we want those spaces, those prime on-street spaces, for example, to be turned over quickly so that other customers have those spaces available to them. Continuing to speak a little bit about inventory, the West End study area had a total of 974 parking spaces, of which most are on street. There's only one surface lot in that area. A lot of our decal parking is in the West End. Of the on-street spaces, 46% are free customer parking, and the rest are decal or metered parking. So just a quick recap also then of downtown, over 2,000 spaces in downtown, including on-street and several off-street lots, as well as our parking garage, which has about over 300 spaces, close to 350 spaces. Of the on-street spaces, a much different makeup of those spaces than in West End. 73% are our free customer parking, while only about 27% are decal or metered, located mostly along the train tracks. And I just wanted to mention in this section, you'll also find information on like an inventory of bike parking, which we conducted. Parking wayfinding, there's a section on that. So the parking signage, the way the users find our parking system. And we did an analysis on accessible parking too, which you'll see the details of within that section. So how we conform to ADA and what recommendations we have related to ADA. So moving on to utilization, the demand on those spaces. I will first talk about West End. You'll see some maps such as this nature in the report. We call this a heat map. Basically, green to red represents how utilized that specific facility is or street segment. So these maps represent where, red being the most utilized area, dark green being the least. So that inventory was conducted, and I think maybe someone mentioned, but the West End counts were done for one Saturday and one Thursday in August after school was in session. And those were conducted throughout the day, 4 different time periods to capture morning, midday, late afternoon, and evening after 6:30 p.m. The peak of West End ended up being the weekday during that lunch hour, about 12 to 1 o'clock, which represents commuters being there, students being there, a lunch crowd at a restaurant or two, as well as employees. At that period in time, at the 12 to 1 period, of the spaces that we inventoried, so everything that you see here in total, it was 54% occupied. But as you can see from the heat map, a lot of wide variation in how those spaces are being used, which comes into play as we talk about recommendations. Downtown, again, another heat map. This represents the peak, which I should start out by saying we did these counts in July, one weekday on a Wednesday and a Saturday in July to capture the peak summer activity, dining, that kind of thing, going out for ice cream, the theater in July 20th and 23rd. The peak, as everyone probably expects, is a Saturday evening after 6:30. So that's the map that you see here. So a lot of red sort of in this area, but then as you can see, green as you move out from sort of our core destinations in town. I meant to add, just for perspective, I'm also a resident of LaGrange, so I should have said that initially, but so I do have some insider perspectives on using the parking system because I do live here. So, you can see from this yellow here represents the garage, this big box here. This is the calendar, lot 5. So highly utilized 5. The Madison lots here by Cosset, those are all full. This is the parking garage here in yellow, about 70% occupied. And then some of the street parking segments, particularly north, as all the commuters have left, north of the tracks, not utilized at all, very low utilization. So again, wide variation in demand, overall about half full, 51%. You'll also see a section where we talk about walkability and what we called a zone analysis. So instead of just looking at the study area or our 2 study areas overall, we divided the area into sort of walkable 4-block zones, if you will, based on feedback that we heard from stakeholders, kind of the characteristics of the site where walking barriers exist, for example, LaGrange Road. But you can see in these different colors how we had divided up the different sub-areas, if you will. And so there's occupancy of each of those different areas as well. So we can focus, sort of see as growth occurs, where's the growth happening. In terms of occupancy, the highest is actually over here by the LT Fields, which is totally full during their peak weekday condition with students, the decal spaces. But in our downtown area, it's this area which you can't probably see, we call Zone 6, the core area around basically Ashland and Callender. And that was about 81% occupied on that Saturday evening. Again, sticking with this map, I guess I'll just mention, this is how we projected out future demand too. So there are tables provided by zone, what the future demand is for that 5-year horizon. And so at a peak, we are projecting that this area of 6 will feel essentially full, over 90% utilized, which sort of highlights probably what we all in this room know. That's the area that really feels full. And so it's just pointing out that the demand on that will have to start to spread out to other zones because people have a hard, while they're not 100% of the spaces are full, people have a hard time finding spaces in that area. Administration and financing, I just wanted to mention that we spent some time looking at revenue, parking citation patterns, and did sort of like an analysis on revenue, and did a lot of talking with the chief and his staff and sort of enforcement procedures, if you will. So that is all within the report too. And one of the recommendations that really points to this discussion is some of the inefficiencies that we have currently with our enforcement, which the recommendations are helped to address. So I think overall, I just wanted to point out that, particularly with the zone analysis, that our issues with parking are not really a matter of supply. We have enough parking, but it's managing that supply better. And so our recommendations are using technology and policy and physical modifications, so locational modifications to regulations, for example, to better manage that parking. So we grouped the recommendations into sort of 5 main buckets, which I will go through each one and talk about sort of the strategies that are associated with that recommendation. The first being encouraging employee parking off-street, particularly in the garage. What we found is that the garage is highly underutilized, particularly in those peak periods of downtown. So the Saturday evenings, we still have plenty of parking left in the garage. And so some of these recommendations are to relocate a lot of the employee parking to the garage, which some of these strategies are hoping to point to. For example, implementing LPR technology, license plate recognition technology. That was one of sort of the higher price tag recommendations that we came up with. So that is something like this you see in this picture, a camera-based technology system where it is not as manually intensive process as the enforcement officers are using now, but a much more automated system that also sort of goes into sort of a revamp of the way license plates are used instead of decal stickers as our permit. And so that is supposed to help with better customer satisfaction with buying permits and maintaining the permits on the backside. The other recommendations that you'll see in this section, so using technology to improve enforcement and making the getting an employee permit easier in the system. Improving communication and reducing permit fees, particularly for employees and if they park in the garage. So currently we charge $20 per month for an employee to park in the garage. So we recommend reducing that permit fee so as an elasticity measure to get more employees to purchase those permits. Extending enforcement hours. There's several recommendations that look at reworking our enforcement hours, particularly in the off-street lots where we have employees parking, and extending those hours till 8 p.m. There are several recommendations on specific posted regulations for on-street and off-street lots. And then looking at a graduated fine structure that sort of doesn't impose a heavy burden on those first-time offenders, but imposes a quickly escalating burden on those that are repeat offenders. So on the second offense, it doubling, and then on the fifth offense, it doubling again. Continuing on, the second recommendation is upgrading meter technology and adjusting those meter rates. The meters, particularly in the West End, are full all the time. So there's a lot of flexibility that would come with rate adjustments in that area. So there was an increased price recommendation for the metered parking there, and ultimately replacing the meters with new smart technology meters that sort of marry into the application that we would be using for enforcement and these virtual permits that read the license plates rather than having the decal sticker. A lot of those meters are getting to be obsolete and ending of their useful life. So it was on the horizon to replace those eventually anyways. Improving the management of commuter parking and right-sizing supply with demand. Commuter parking is really in flux right now. We are finding that it's continuing to be lower than it was pre-pandemic as remote work continues to be an option for people. Though many people are going back to work, there is not the demand that we had seen pre-pandemic yet. So there are several recommendations to better utilize those low demand areas of decal commuter parking, such as overselling the areas to increase the utilization of those zones. We're always targeting approximately an 85% utilization. So when you have decal parking that's well under 50%, it's not being used efficiently because those spaces are tied up the entire day because they have a decal regulation on them. And also, continuing to monitor utilization of the decal areas. And if low utilization continues, it's an option to convert those to 2-hour parking after, for example, 11 a.m. when commuters have already left to go into the city. And so they would be empty anyways. And then lastly, on this page, our report includes a framework for implementation of EV charging, primarily, for resident charging, those residents in the downtown that don't have parking available to them, accommodating their parking and their prospect of having an EV car. And many of the recommendations, they focus on the garage. Ultimately, the report recommends 2 to 3, even 5 spaces in each study area as the demand increases to have enough EV drivers that need that parking. Lastly, the number 5 recommendations focus on sort of the customer experience. So how customers are finding the parking, how they're getting around in the districts, walking, biking, and really their dining experience. Our recommendations did include looking at the parklet, because that's relating to the on-street parking. So creating a permanent parklet program was a recommendation that came out of the report. We gave some guidelines on what those design standards should be, and looked at case studies for the Chicagoland area as well as nationally on fees associated with it. A couple of the others are streamlining and improving really signage and the time limitations in select areas. There were some recommendations on accessible spaces and modifications to those to meet ADA. There was a lot of interest, particularly at the open house, on bike racks. So there are recommendations on not only adding bike racks, but upgrading the racks that we do have to the preferred rack of this U-type. Actually, I included a picture on it, which is here. This is what bikers prefer for parking their bikes. And there is a map that shows potential parking, bike parking or bike rack locations, as well as pedestrian crossing improvements that I mentioned at the beginning. Creating pedestrian enhancements is always helpful to create this park once environment where you can best utilize the spaces, because people feel very comfortable walking further and further distances to get to the parking. And finally, there's an implementation section which hopefully lays out sort of a clear guide, basis of when these recommendations, how they relate to each other and when they should be implemented. We grouped them into short term, 1 to 2 years, midterm, 2 to 5, and a longer term, 5 to 10 years. And some of those have costs associated with them to help in budgeting, et cetera. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I'll start off with a couple of questions. And I'm not sure if you'll know the answer, or Charity or anyone, and that is, do we know if any businesses purchase stickers for their employees? Are certain businesses given like 20 spots or something? Or am I just thinking of that?
Sure, I can speak to that. Food service businesses are provided with the employee decals for free for their employees. Non-food service businesses, employees are $20 a month for the employee decal. And Lou, correct me if I get any of those numbers wrong. He just walked away.
So I'm sorry, Charity, did you say that food service, and was that based on back when we had a food and beverage
Correct.
tax?
It dates back to when we had the food and beverage tax.
And do they just get to ask for as many as they want, or how do we
Maybe
determine?
Lou can speak to that if there's any cap or limit on that. But to your question, your other question related to the employee parking decal program, what we found is that it's underutilized. There are far more employees in the downtown that don't have decals than do. And you can just tell by the records of which businesses are acquiring decals for their employees and which ones aren't.
Okay. So I guess in the study, you mentioned lowering the price, but it sounds like for a lot of our businesses, we're at zero.
Yes, that would be, yes, exactly. So for the businesses that are already receiving decals for $0, they would be allocated the parking garage levels 2 and 3. For those that are charged $20, that fee would be less if they were parking in the parking garage.
Okay, and do you have any ideas on how to encourage more of the employees that have the option for a free decal to actually utilize that?
So I think the enforcement piece is a big one of that. So one of the recommendations that's in the report is that I think we need to extend the enforcement hours, particularly for the off-street lots where we host decal parking. Those would be extended to 8 p.m. And that's because a lot of those evening shift employees that are arrived, remember our biggest problem is evening peaks, Saturday, Friday evenings. And so by extending it to 8 p.m., we are getting the employees that are arriving at, for example, 4 and could actually park legally currently at 4 o'clock because enforcement stops at 6 in a 3-hour lot. So by extending that window and targeting enforcement between the hours of 4 and 8, it's really a disincentive to park because they will now be getting a ticket.
And Chief Wardloff, I don't know if you'll know this or not, but I'll try to put you on the spot, I guess. And that would be with as far as enforcement and the license plate reader. Would any of the squad cars have this technology, or would it just be our parking enforcement people?
Right now, it'd just be parking enforcement. Probably about 8 years ago, we did have LPR technology for 2 squads. Unfortunately, the company at the time is no longer in business. As such, our software no longer functioned, and we got rid of that equipment. So right now, we would just primarily focus on parking enforcement. If that works out well, then we could look at equipping a couple cars out.
Thank you. And to jump to another topic, and then I'll open up for anybody else who has questions. I saw in there, but I wasn't sure about some of the costs for the electric, putting in charging stations and things. What are you, and I know that there's 3 stages of chargers or generations of chargers, and you're up to type 3 or generation 3, or I'm not actually sure what it's called, but I know it's 3. And it's the quick chargers.
3. Yeah.
What are you estimating as a cost to put one of those in, both dragging the power to it and then the equipment? And then do you have a recommendation of how that is owned, who runs it, as well as how much is charged, or cost-wise?
Sure. So our recommendation, so we are, and this is more standard than anything. We don't have specific quotes on what LaGrange specifically has available, but a level 3 charger can run $40,000, $20,000 to $40,000, depending on what you're retrofitting, where your power source is. So they're very expensive. I think that by space number goes down, the more you put in, of course. We were focusing on accommodating resident EV needs first, because they're really stuck not having access to charging. And so the garage seemed like the most appropriate location for those. Number one, it's an underutilized parking resource, but also it's covered, and residents, there's a lot of residents that use it for overnight parking.
Okay. Other questions, anyone? Trustee Gale.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, I think we're ready to hear your thoughts or questions, or however you want to phrase it.
Oh, geez, sorry. Thought I was on the whole time.
Now they can hear you.
Explains why I didn't hear the echo of my voice. I thought I was losing it there. Sorry. So I'll start with some questions. Ms. Conway, do you have a sense of how many employee cars are we talking about? Is it dozens, hundreds? Like what? I mean, and not going to hold you to it, but like a sense.
Do you mean that are not using the decals?
Just in general. I mean, just start with, because then these guys are going to get some questions. Yeah, do you have a feel for it at all? Like, are we, at peak, is it, 150 cars? Like, any idea?
In terms of current demand that we were counting, I think it's probably about 150 to 200 cars That is not sort of that latent demand, if you will, of who should be or could be, I guess.
Okay. And then, I mean, Lou, Charity, either of you have a sense for like how many employees are taking us up on the stickers or the decals?
Sure. We, because of the varying shifts and whatnot and of the business types, we actually issue about 600 to 700 employee parking decals each month. But they obviously all aren't here
right at the same time, of course. Right,
but yeah,
right.
we average about 600 to 700.
Okay.
How many of those are paid?
Approximately half.
Thanks, President Kugler. That was my next question. That's okay. No, that's great. Yeah, and then okay, and then back to you, Ms. Conway. If I'm understanding right from the report, sort of shifting to the West End, it was like the West End doesn't have enough free parks. I mean, is enough the right way to describe it? Like there's a difference in the amount of free parking in the downtown area versus West End. Is what we have in the West End, is that sort of out of step with other areas, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's really only about half of the parking is being utilized. Free, decal, whatever the case may be. It does vary based on what type of parking it is, but it's fairly appropriately sized. We do have recommendations to the different specific locations. For example, if you're talking specifically about the decal spaces, there were recommendations based on sort of oversell rates and how we sort of reach that 85% target, if you will. The free parking, however, is about half used, and the metered parking, though, is full.
Okay. And I think I just had some thoughts I think I wanted to share, but also sort of to share with the board as well and with staff about what sort of the recommendations. So one, I mean, I'm very glad we did this. I mean, I think it's a great comprehensive report. It helps us a lot make decisions. You know, we hear things anecdotally, but to actually get sort of some numbers behind it. I was very pleased to see, at least in the survey responses, and I know it's not statistically significant, but you said it's a good survey response. Like by my math, it was like 85% said it's either extremely easy, or neither easy nor difficult to park in LaGrange, and that's great to hear. You don't want to see that flipped. I was surprised to learn we have 3,000 parking spots. I thought that was a lot, but we need to redistribute it, as I think your report said, because even at our peak, we're just like using half of it. And then I don't know how to get people to be willing to walk a few extra blocks. Like I looked on the heat map, like my secret parking spot is on here, and nobody parks there. And I don't know why people won't cross Ashland, but literally. Like,
because you won't tell them where the secret spot is.
It's on Ashland and Harris. Turn left and go west instead of east into the lot. And there's always parking there, always, anytime. So my wife even said I could say that, so that like we gave it away. So, and then I was glad to see that the parklets are popular. So then I think my thoughts on the recommendations is, one is sort of keep it simple to the extent we can. Like in looking through this, I see, I don't know how many different zones for like the metered parking. It's like hour, 2 hour, 4 hour, 8 hour, 6 hour. I kind of, one of the tables here I got lost in. But I like the idea of we've kind of talked about it already, the employees, like where they park. My thought was essentially create a zone and say, look, employees just cannot park in this zone. And we will, I don't know how it'll work budget-wise, but we will just, since we already give away half the decals, we just make them free. And the trade-off is employees get them for free, but you got to park outside of the high heat areas. And we let the staff work on where's the appropriate spot. But it seems to me, it's lot 3, 4, 5, 8. Those are the ones, those are the big ones, 5 being Calendar Court. And that'll free up, seems like from the study, it'll free up space. And again, the trade-off is get a sticker, and then I think with the added enforcement, which is, I've thought about parking a lot in terms of like how do you incentivize parking further away? I don't think there's really a good way. I think you sort of de-incentivize parking closer. And then actually a final closeout question on the EVs, which I like the idea, but is there any thought now, by putting in EV stations, do you end up like increasing demand? Like, are more people going to drive? Do we end up like we put the stations in and now suddenly it's like we've gobbled up spaces with these and more people are driving now, which is, we kind of want to know, like, we don't want you to drive, park further away. I don't know, have you guys thought about that, seen that?
Well, certainly we wouldn't want the EV chargers to go in highly utilized lots. They would need to be in more remote locations. For the example, the garage, which we have so much excess parking in the garage. I don't think we're losing anything. But in terms of like sort of that latent demand, I think you're referring to, we were really, I think some communities do use EV charging as an economic development tool, or they're aiming to. Whether or not it's effective or not, I don't know. But the intent, I think, of these recommendations are really to accommodate residents in the location that they need the parking within. If it were something that you wanted, to look into as an economic development tool, maybe that is more true in that situation. But I think that's probably much longer lead time, and there are some sort of tidbits, if you will, for how to go about using spaces as an economic development tool. A lot of people partner with something like Blink, and so they are paying for the installation of those EV. It's a much higher cost to the end user, to the parker, but then again, they're paying for that, so maybe it's not overall increasing demand all that much.
All right, well, thanks. And thanks everybody for putting up with my lengthy questions and comments. I'm done.
Trustee Kutinek?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Kelly, thanks for your time and your survey and presentation. I think it reinforces a lot of what I've thought all along. LaGrange doesn't have a parking supply problem. LaGrange has a parking problem when it's not right in front of the restaurant you want to go to. And I think that's a behavioral pattern that I don't think we can solve here. I'll make a couple comments. I'll throw in a question if you at the end. And staff, you can take my comments for whatever they're worth. I think employees should, to your point, park in the two top floors of the garage. They seem to be open. People don't like driving up that far for some reason, but I think that's where they should go. I like the spots available sign for the parking garage, because it lets people know right away that, okay, you might not find a spot on the first floor, but there's 250 spots in there. Just keep on going another couple turns. And then I don't know if there's any technology in terms of like an interactive map. I know I see Dan from the Elm over here. When you send out reservations for a restaurant reservation, could you put an interactive link on there and show, here's parking spots in LaGrange, just to kind of assist them. And then Kelly, I guess my question, you talked a little bit about technology tools. I think it focused mainly on permitting stuff, but do you see any consumer-facing technology tools in municipalities to direct people, to the outspots? And thanks for your time.
Sure. So something like an advanced guidance system is what we use as the term for the real-time signage that's pointing you to the garage, for example, and saying how many spaces are available. Those can get extraordinarily expensive, things that you see, for example, at Oak Brook Mall. But there are some entry-level systems that are more counting cars at the entrance and exit and sort of adjusting based on how many are entering and how many are exiting, which are in the $100,000 to $150,000 range. And so that is a recommendation, more of a longer-term recommendation. I think you should sort of look at other recommendations first and how they're working before you need to spend that much, because parking is just not a huge problem yet. And as it gets worse, If it gets worse, that may be something that's you're more willing to spend that money on. But you don't have to do a full, complete retrofit like Oak Brook to do something like that. Is that the type of interface you're speaking of? Right?
Yeah, I think so. And then I'll just quickly close out. I think staff and a couple of board members up here have done a lot of good work with CASIT. The library, we've seen the teacher lot become available. We've seen the library work with us. We've had some experimental weekends with CASIT School. I think, to me, that's a no-brainer to continue those dialogues, continue the relationship. The spend that we would have with CASIT on maintenance of the lot versus, $100,000, which is material capex and some of this technology. It's close. It's what people want, and we can have a win-win for both parties, the village and the school. So I'll close on those comments.
Thank you, Trustee Kutinek. Any other comments? Trustee Augustine?
Thank you, President Kukler, and thank you, Ms. Connolly, for this report. We've been following along with you for a while now, going to some of the open houses and seeing this thing take shape. These recommendations really are helpful to us, as we've all agreed. By way of doing this, we needed to figure out our inventory and work on some things with some outside perspective. I'm concerned a bit, though, on the cost of some of these solutions on the whole, and whether we can make our money back on them. So one of them is the LPR. So if we're outfitting 2 vehicles, $100,000 right there. And then we're looking at $4,000 a year for the usage fee. So before you know it, we're at $120,000. So we just have to figure out if that's going to fall on you, right, Lou? Figure out, if the sale of permits, whether digital or physical, will outweigh that. Because it does look like the useful life of this LPR tech, and we've already felt the pinch of it before, is 5 years. So what happens if the company goes out of business like our previous? So just want to really consider some of these things and figure out if the investment pays for itself. But I do like the idea of going digital for all the other reasons that it can benefit the community in that way. And then just back to EV, as an EV driver myself, I have a house in LaGrange, and like most people who would have an EV in LaGrange, you have a house and a garage, you charge at home. I walk into town because I'm close, so I wouldn't drive, but I wouldn't necessarily need to look for an EV spot to plug in. So it's not going to be from the homeowners so much in LaGrange, but as you've said, the residents in downtown who have apartments and condos without a garage, it would really help service them to have a few spots, and that would be a good forward-thinking green measure. And I think that some of these things, we can look at Countryside and what Western Springs has done, and they're not huge expenses. Level 1, level 2, level 3, that has to do with the speed at which it charges, the power which comes through it. So if it's a slower charge, maybe they need to just top off and it's a couple hours, maybe less, maybe more. But these people, even the residents in the area who would use it, they would pay more if they just sat there. So they're going to use it for a couple hours and then they're going to grab their car and put it back where they normally put it. So, I think there's a lot of turnover, and we can service people well that way. And then the other side of it, like you said, is a destination. I often plan my road trips around what town has charging. I always do. And it's pretty easy to do, and it's important. So people would come off 290 and the Stevenson to hit LaGrange, and generally in the area, if they know that, I need a little extra juice here. I miscalculated for the day. I'm going to go grab lunch in LaGrange. What a nice convenience. So that's on the EV note. And then with the heat map, if we could just go back to this downtown, or we don't have to, we can just envision it, I guess. The area where the majority of the parking is a problem in that zone between Burlington and Cossett and Ashland and LaGrange Road. I agree with everyone that we need to rebalance, no doubt about it. But the area that's in most need is, it may look, according to some of those charts, like there's plenty of capacity. And again, if you travel off in some of these side streets, there is. But, including the Gordon Park parking, across the tracks, across LaGrange Road and across Ogden Avenue to park to go to the theater is probably not something that a lot of people will do. But that's hundreds of spots that make it look like it's not as big of a problem to park down here as it really is. So, I'd say that might even be a bigger problem than it looks like from the couple of days we sampled the area. So to accommodate that area where we have, and Charity, you may know this, or maybe Nancy knows this, but the majority of our restaurants are in that area. So the majority of employees, the majority of customers coming and going. So that is the area. It does need the most focus. And as Trustee Kotinik said, I think we're all in favor of using what we have, and the way we've been able to partner with the library and CASET should continue to grow because there's capacity there that exists and goes unused at certain times of day. So with a minimal investment in those areas, we can alleviate the pain in some very, in a very needed area without too much effort. And, you know, the study was also done before LaGrange Theater had, I think they have 6 theaters now. And we have the new restaurant, which you referenced, coming in. That'll be a very sizable one. So we're going to need to have the capacity that we have for the restaurants and the businesses that we have, and then be able to continue to grow beyond the next new one that comes in. So I'm just looking at using everything we have, and I'm hopeful that, and I know it wasn't part of your mission on this study, but I'm hopeful that we, as Trustee Kotinik said, that we look seriously at continuing to expand how we use that supply. That's my comment.
Thank you, Trustee Augustine. Trustee Peterson.
Yes, thank you, President Kukler. My question is, I was rather surprised when you said that you received so many comments about bike riding, and it is your recommendation that we replace or our bike racks. But my question to you is that did you get a sense of people were actually willing and excited, maybe, I don't know what the best word would be, to take their bikes for a Saturday evening to the downtown area for dinner, or am I making that up?
Well, I can tell you that there was a lot of interest in improving the bike racks, and I think anything that we can do to help improve the experience of bikers coming to downtown will only help reduce our parking demand by encouraging bikers to come. I don't think that my intent was to say that's a significant adjustment that comes by providing one bike rack to what the demand is on a peak Saturday.
I was looking at your recommendations about people walking when they make sure there's lighting, there's appropriate lighting, and they're looking around and seeing large planters and making the experience pleasurable. I would think that would also apply to bike riders as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment.
Following up on the bikes, maybe this. So we have, doing more bike racks, but we don't want them on the downtown streets. We don't want them on LaGrange Road sidewalks. We don't want them where the restaurants have outdoor diners. The owners of the restaurants have told us it's one of their biggest pet peeves is their servers walk with a tray full of drinks and food, and a bike rider comes by and accidents happen. So how do we do that? How do we, get the bike racks, but put them in such a location and advertise kind of, this is the end of the line for bikes, park your bikes here and walk?
Yeah, I think we specifically cited the racks based on exactly that. They are not in front of restaurants. They're mostly at basically the side streets at the intersections of LaGrange Road. I think those are appropriate locations. For example, near the Starbucks was a location that we had. I think having one though, however, at the movie theater makes a lot of sense. You actually have bike racks along LaGrange Road where you fit 2 to 4 bikes, and it's parallel to the roadway, and those could fit without impeding the pedestrian path.
We have a prohibition, though, against riding bikes on the sidewalks in LaGrange.
They would be walking their bike to those racks. The intent would not be.
As a father of 4, I know that's going to be difficult parenting message to get the children to wear the bike helmet and to walk their bikes when they're in that area. Off the complete top of my head, and so it's usually comes back to be wrong. But to me, it's something like where we could work with CASA, because they probably have a lot of kids that ride bikes during the school day, and maybe we can supply the bike racks and work in conjunction with them, and then have it a real area that's known that park your bike there. It's whatever, we can secure it or do something to make it a real magnet. It's helpful to the school, and we can help it to the downtown community by saying, hey, that's where you should park your bikes and walk. Just an idea. Anyone else on the parking study? Kelly, I really appreciate you coming. Obviously, you didn't have to drive far. Hopefully, you walk so you can say, well, I walked here. Or parked on the third floor of the garage, either way.
I got my walking shoes in the back.
We do appreciate it. It's a great report. It gives us a lot to digest, a lot to think about, a lot to study as we go forward. I'm not sure, maybe that's the last question for Charity, Lou, Jack. What do we do as far as the next steps? Is there, I think CASA got mentioned a couple of times, and how do we evaluate, using CASA more or less or better, or, I don't think you studied how to use CASA, did you?
What do you mean?
Sure. Like when we used CASA during our trial run in December, it's my understanding we put up signs and said, parking CASA. CASA's not striped. There's not bollards around the equipment. There's a lot of issues that doing that creates problems. There may be a better way to say, well, we're going to use it for valet, or we're going to stripe it, or we're going to regulate it, or we're just going to keep it open, or we're only going to open it on Saturdays, or things like that, I guess. I don't know if we're going to make those internal decisions, if staff, if you, do we know, have we thought of any of that, I guess?
Well, we have, what was included in our study was basically the more typical conditions where the official agreement is with the employee parking lot. It wasn't during the event conditions or that pilot trial where we were actually using the playground. So we don't have specific recommendations on, for example, layout or how to operationally use that. It was more the standard shared parking agreement that's in place.
Okay, and then maybe if I can get from the board, is that something that you would like staff to look at, how best to use CASA? It looks like I'm seeing some shaking of the head. So is that the type of direction staff's looking for from this study, or?
So the recommendations that are in the study, as far as next steps, some of those things have been incorporated already into the staff's budget proposals that we'll be talking about at the budget workshop. And then if there are additional things that the board would like to direct staff to pursue beyond the recommendations in the study, we can look at those as well. And certainly some of the recommendations of the study aren't things that would be a part of the budget considerations, but would be presented to the board at a later date for consideration for those policy changes, like changes to the regulations for some of our parking areas, which are really more policy than physical improvements or other kind of purchases that we would need to make in the budget process.
Okay. I think the next step then is to have a vote, and that is a vote on the plan. Is that what we're voting on? Or just to be clear? What's that? We haven't. We can't. To accept it, I think we need a vote. And I'm just wondering, I wanted to make sure everybody was clear, because I was a little unclear as to what we are voting on. I guess we're voting to accept the plan.
That was the motion. The second was to accept the plan. You are not voting on the actual, call it solution or recommendation, is to accept the plan.
Okay. With that clarification, if there's no further board discussion, I would ask Clerk Saladino to do a roll call vote.
Trustee Gale?
Aye.
Trustee Katenik?
Aye.
Trustee Peterson?
Aye.
Trustee O'Brien?
Aye.
Trustee McGee?
Aye.
Trustee Augustine?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously, so thank you For that, moving on, the next thing we have to consider is the executive recruitment services with the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association. To give a little bit of background, we did use the Illinois Chiefs Association for our recruitment of our acting chief, John Buckley, and as part of that, they asked us to seriously consider them for use in the recruitment process. And I indicated that we would definitely consider them for that. And then I think staff agreed that the Chiefs Association is best designed for fire chief recruitment. Not only are they able to make sure that the opening is known to all of their members, most fire chiefs, both in the state and outside of the state, they have access to the fire chiefs that will be part of the assessment. And I guess maybe, Chief Buckley, if I can put you on the spot a little bit, just very generally, kind of what's involved in a chief hiring, not that we're specific to LaGrange, but just a very big overview to the board, which will be the first time the board hears really on a fire chief hiring. I'd appreciate it.
Sure, you're not putting me on the spot at all. What the Illinois fire chiefs do that's a little different than some other agencies is they actually conduct an assessment. The state of Illinois requires fire chief assessors to be certified through the state. There are quite a few of those. Everyone that comes in from the Illinois fire chiefs will be certified throughout the state. I'm actually a certified assessor through the state. I've done many assessments, not only with with the Illinois fire chiefs, but with other organizations for different positions. I think what they do is a good process that will help you not only choose a fire chief and choose someone who's very well qualified, but also understand the type of value that person brings to the organization and some of their strong points through the evaluation process. So again, I've had a number of experiences with it. We've worked together to put together a timeline that I think is aggressive. However, I think could be easily met if we stick with it. So I think it's a good organization. I'm happy to answer questions if you have them.
Okay, I appreciate it, Chief. With that background, I would ask for a motion and a second. And this again is to hire the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association to conduct this search, and then we can have any more questions after that.
I move we approve the agreement to hire the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association for the recruitment effort.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Gale and Trustee O'Brien. Any questions, comments regarding this? Are you saying yes, Peggy, or pointing down? Oh. Okay. All right. Seeing no questions, a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Augustine?
Aye.
Trustee Katina?
Aye.
Trustee McGee?
Aye.
Trustee Peterson? Trustee O'Brien?
Aye.
Trustee Gale?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. At this time, I would ask if there's any public comments regarding matters not on tonight's agenda.
Hi, everybody. I'm Becky, as you know, from Community Diversity, and I thank you for your presentation on our Mosaic project last time. I just wanted to update you that we have received a little less than 2/3 of the money, and we're still looking for 1/3. So if you know of anyone who would be interested in assisting with donations so that this project will be possible, we would really appreciate it. So spread the word. If you need any more flyers or anything, just see me. I'd be happy to share with you. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Becky.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michael West, and I'd like to thank the village for continuing to pay attention to the sewer issues. Sewer lining program and particularly commissioning the study for the area north of 47th. We look forward to seeing what that report provides and what recommendations and solutions the village comes up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West.
Hey everyone, my name is Dan Spain. I am the owner of the Elm Restaurant located at 23 West Harris Avenue. Pretty sure all of you know who I am. Thank you for the analysis on that. I know that that was a lot of time and effort. I know that there was a lot of money spent. I'm a little disappointed that it was only 2 days. July 20th, one of them being a Wednesday, for me is the slowest day. So
it just, so Wednesday slower than Mondays?
Well, I'm closed Monday, so that's kind of a lie.
I'm glad we didn't do it Monday then.
So, I mean, I'm closed on Mondays for a reason, but Wednesdays out of the 6 days that I'm open is by far the slowest. It's the third week in July, so there's a lot of people in the community that aren't around. That being said, July is a busy month. But the fact that you're going to go off of a 10-year, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year plan off of 2 days of data, to me, something's a little off. So I'll leave that there. Number two, I'm also a little disappointed that Gordon Park is in that area. It's rarely used. Nobody really knows about it. You're talking about a lot of spaces. I think the data is a little misleading overall. If you look at, and look, I'm extremely fortunate, and I love my partnership with the Village of LaGrange, along with everything that the Public Works Department does. I implore you to try and find a solution with CASET. It is cheap. And unfortunately, when that little pilot program was going on in December, I had COVID. The one day that I came back, and this is not a knock, one of the days we had a lot of events going on, I had to pull one sign out. So whatever you can do to, as a village, I'm happy to partner with the village to try and get better signage. I would greatly appreciate it. And if I have to go to do valet, that's fine. I'm not saying that this is all your problem. How are you going to fix it? So, and, you know, it's just a little frustrating that you would put in only 2 days. No offense. Maybe a little. It just is a little baffling to me. So, again, I appreciate your time as always. Overall, the Village of LaGrange is doing a phenomenal job. And that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Kelly, I don't know if you, I know we don't want to get into debate, but I don't know if you want to come up and address whether or not 2 days is sufficient or not sufficient. And also that heat map with Gordon Park. I can tell you when I saw that, I was much more focused on the fact that the parking deck wasn't full. And so if the parking deck's not full, obviously nobody that's going to be going to either the Elm or the movie theater or Monk's or in, you know, Max or any place you can think of is going to be parking at Gordon. They're not walking to the parking deck, which they're not walking 2 blocks away on Ashland. To me, it's not that we were using Gordon as, oh, there's a lot of spots here. We're definitely going to get somehow convince people who won't walk 2 blocks to walk to Gordon. But maybe you could address that a little better.
Yeah, so first of all, I think that, you know, our study includes data collection that we conducted on 2 days for downtown, but it also looks at historical data that the city monitors annually. So they go out, I mean, Charity can say exactly the extents, but we were provided data for 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, and so there are comparisons there for consistency, if you will, or to see historically what the trends are. So the recommendations really aren't just on the one day of study. And so hopefully, if you read the report, it's very clear that really the recommendations look at the zone analysis. The Elm is within one of the most utilized area of the downtown, no question, but that was only 80% occupied, indicating that within one block, there are spaces available. The surface lots are full. It's on street parking, and you do have to walk to get it. So, I think that is the intent of the zone analysis, that we are not making recommendations with the assumption that anyone that's going to the Elm is using Gordon Park. That is absolutely not practical or what is implied.
Thank you. I appreciate it. With those comments, I would we will move to trustee comments, but if any trustee wanted to comment regarding parking, I'd open that up also for that first. But seeing none, we then now have to have a roll. We have that. It passed unanimously, correct? All right. We are done with comments, it looks like, so we can move to trustee comments. Are there any trustee comments? Trustee Augustine.
Thank you, President Kukler. Last Tuesday, February 21st, I was again abruptly jolted from my desk chair by another huge blast from Lehigh Hanson's federal quarry in McCook, Illinois. We all know them. I hadn't felt one of them in a while, and this one was quite big. These blasts, which are actually a series of explosions, shake my home as many as 6 days a week, year-round. Many know that the stone has been quarried from this mine for generations, but up until a few years ago, it was all surface mining. The blasting they're doing now is subterranean, the effects of which are stronger and more deeply felt. So Tuesday was another reminder for me to try to do something, which at the moment isn't much, but I can ask that anyone who feels these blasts would recommend that they let Hanson know, and the village will, by way of that, also know. And they can do this by calling 1-866-934-3278 or 1-866-WE-HEAR-YOU with a letter U, which is, I think, an ironic. It's irony, really, because we hear them. When you call, they'll tell you that the blasts are within acceptable tolerances. What I've learned is these tolerances are based on a very old study from 1980. It was done out of state, so nothing fresh. And nothing based on the stone of the area. That's what's subsurface here. So they'll claim also that, again, no harm is being done to our structures, but I think our pipes and our roads, and certainly for those homeowners who feel it, you know, when your house physically shakes and you're seeing new cracks on your walls continually, that's not just an old house, and it's happening to new houses as well. So this is LaGrange and Brookfield and Countryside, and I'm working with some folks who are hopefully going to do a little bit more to try to put some pressure and get some communication from the quarry. So I would also encourage that you join the Facebook group called Lyons Township Quarry Information / Underground Blasting at McCook Quarry. You'll find a group of folks who are going through this together, and pretty much they've all given up. That's the comments that we see on there, that nothing will happen. But I'm hoping that together we can figure something out and get some relief. So wanted to make that mention.
Thank you, Trustee Augustine. I would just follow up with that and say, you know, if you feel vibrations due to blasting and you do not call, the quarry likes to say nobody else is complaining. You're the only, one person's complaining. It's so important that you call and complain, and you do it repeatedly, because the quarry does meet quarterly. They're supposed to tell us about the number of complaints, and they will say, oh, look, we only had one complaint this quarter, and therefore we can blast even more. So I think it's important that if you're experiencing the impacts of the blasting, you do call the hotline and raise your concerns. With that, any other trustee comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:21.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Gale.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee McGee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned to meet again a week from Saturday.